I like the Star Wars sequels. The Rise of Skywalker is my favourite Star Wars film, but this trilogy isn't without its problems. And I wanted to dive deep into my feelings on this trilogy overall now that we've had a couple of months to sit with it. The idea behind this video isn't to bash on the movies. That's not what I'm here to do. If you're here in hopes of hearing an hour-long rant about how Disney ruined Star Wars and ruined everyone's childhood, then I'm sorry, you're in the wrong place. Where this trilogy suffers the most comes from Lucasfilm and Disney's inability to have any sort of a direction for the overall story. It's mind-blowing to me that the same studio, who has so much success with planning multi-franchise shared cinematic universes with Marvel, didn't implement the same level of care and planning just across 3 movies, let alone what Kevin Feige was able to do with 23. We start with The Force Awakens, which I adore, introducing us to Rey, Finn, Poe, BB-8, Kylo Ren, and of course, Darth Plagueis, I mean Snoke. Did we need yet another Death Star? Probably not, but I digress. Let's start with Rey, a character many have called a Mary Sue, which I completely disagree with. I can't help but wonder if Rey was a male character, if everyone would have been questioning where the strength in the Force came from, or the ability to pilot the Falcon so well. I think JJ started out on the right path with Episode 7, making Rey a nobody just trying to find her place in the galaxy. After all, that's what Star Wars has always been about, finding your place in the world, teaching kids that even if you come from nothing, you're still special. The idea that her power has to be explained by lineage is absurd. Every Jedi in history, with the exception of Anakin, Luke, and Leia, were just Force-sensitive children who were trained to become Jedi. I love that The Force Awakens isn't just about the Force awakening in this young girl of Rey, but is also about the dark side awakening in Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. Possibly the best character in the sequel trilogy, and I can only imagine how much pain Adam Driver's back must be in from carrying these films on his own. Rey's journey throughout The Force Awakens and the Force connection between her and Kylo I find really compelling, and her finally having found Luke Skywalker offering his father's saber back to him is one of the greatest ends to a Star Wars movie, if not the greatest end to a Star Wars movie. It's certainly my favourite. Enter Rian Johnson. People like to blame Johnson for having Luke on the island, wanting nothing to do with the Jedi, and to me this is misplaced. It was JJ who put Luke into exile. A choice that I do not blame JJ for. I understand where people have issues with The Last Jedi. I can see why seeing your childhood hero of Luke Skywalker suddenly be turned into a recluse and not be the bright spark of hope might be disappointing. Overall as a film, I enjoyed The Last Jedi. It did a lot of things right in my opinion, including Luke's arc in the film. In some ways, this film is incredibly consistent with following up on The Force Awakens, especially when it comes to Rey's journey as being a nobody, finding her place in the galaxy, and deepening the mysterious connection between herself and Kylo Ren. My biggest issues with The Last Jedi are in line with others. Canto Bight sucked. I think the characters of Finn and Rose were both misused horribly. I can understand the challenge of writing this movie, because you either jump ahead a year or so in the timeline, giving characters a chance to develop and not having 2 movies of essentially what ended up being the exact same setup, or you pick up right away, which puts you in a creative bind. I admire Johnson as a filmmaker, and in hindsight I can look at The Last Jedi and say I would rather he not have directed a saga film, because in my view, he is at his best when he is directing his own original material. But the flip side of that is that he gave me some of my favourite Star Wars moments of all time. Yoda and Luke, Kylo killing Snoke, and that entire throne room fight. I'm even a fan of the Holdo maneuver, even though I'm not so much a fan of her purple hair. Certainly don't envy Kathy Kennedy, J.J. Abrams and Disney and the position that the unfortunate loss of Carrie Fisher put them in. If they recast, people would hate it. If they wrote her out entirely, people would hate it. In the end, I think using old footage of her from Episode 7 was the right approach, even if it was detrimental to the story of Episode 9 overall. I said Rise of Skywalker is my favourite film in the saga, and I 100% stand by that. However, it does not mean that this film is without its problems, and overall I think causes the biggest issues for the trilogy. It's really hard to watch Rise of Skywalker having read Colin Trevorrow's story for what Episode 9 would have looked like, even though I shouldn't. I can't help resenting Episode 9 because of what we could have gotten. I was always someone who was perfectly happy at the idea of bringing back Palpatine for this film. It does in a sense tie the entire saga together, and I enjoyed all of his scenes in the movie. That entire opening scene of Rise of Skywalker, starting with Kylo Ren on Mustafar and confronting the Emperor, is my favourite opening in any Star Wars film ever. I've seen many criticisms that Rise of Skywalker is just a failed attempt at Avengers Endgame, and I cannot completely disagree. Even though I enjoyed this film for its fast-paced, incredible action and its goofiness, I have always had mixed feelings about the decision to make Rey the granddaughter of Palpatine. We all know, and it's been well documented, that this was never JJ's original intention. I don't think this film blatantly ignores Last Jedi as some others might say it does. I do, however, truly believe that Lucasfilm and Disney were incredibly oversensitive and reactionary to The Last Jedi. And this film chooses safe and crowd-pleasing in favour of doing what's best for the overall narrative of this sequel saga, and again I come back to Disney not having an original plan for this trilogy. Normally in my reviews I try very hard to not say what a movie should have done in its story, but I feel with a few simple changes, Rise of Skywalker improves drastically while also being more consistent with the previous two installments. My initial thought is not to have Rey be a Palpatine at all, while still having the Emperor in the film. The Emperor's entire motive throughout the entire Star Wars saga is finding the secret to cheating death. That should have been his motivation in this film as well. Instead of him accidentally discovering Kylo and Ren were a dyad in the Force and have this healing ability, his entire goal of the film should have been getting them both to Exegol to restore himself, at least in my view. However, I could also go the other way. Let's have Rey be Palpatine's granddaughter, but instead of her choosing the name Skywalker at the end, she would answer the old woman with, "I'm just Rey." To me, that's really poetic. A character like Rey who longs to be more than just a nobody, finding out she is the descendant of the greatest evil of all time, and ultimately choosing to go back to being who she is, just Rey. The Rise of Skywalker could still even remain the title of the film. It would just refer to Kylo Ren coming back to the light side and embracing who he is. I like all three of these films individually. They just don't work as a trilogy. There's no consistency, there is no one singular vision. Say what you want about the prequels, but there is a very clear through line and a direction across all three of those films. That trilogy knew where it was ending before it even began. And the same could be said with the original trilogy. The sequels have two movies of setup and a finale that in a lot of ways does its own thing and does not connect. Again, overall, I have to stress, I enjoyed all three of the sequel trilogy films. The Rise of Skywalker is still my favourite Star Wars movie. That may change. Let me know in the comments section below what your thoughts on the Star Wars trilogy is overall. As a sequel trilogy, do they work for you? Do they not? I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section below. Please keep it respectful. Let's prove to the world that Star Wars fans aren't just a toxic fan base to be a part of. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit that subscribe button, ring that notifications bell so that you never miss out on my take on all things movies. My name is Tom, and I will see you guys next time.